Here's my philosophy on this. You buy boring, you build quietly. Let me tell you what I figured out that most people never will. The wealthiest people in the world, they are not building apps. They're not on magazine covers. They're not pitching VCs. They own boring businesses that print money. One woman built a roofing company into a $1 billion enterprise. That's Diane Hendricks. I actually want to have her on the podcast. She's a total stud. A garbage man became the wealthiest person in the state and in the country at the time. That was Wayne Huizenga. Not fairy tales. That's like public record. But, why does everybody tell you out there to go chase the next shiny thing, to go try to be viral, to chase, somebody else's definition of success? I think the cynics get to be right and the optimists get to be rich. It totally rewired my brain. Because cynics are right most of the time. Most businesses fail. Most ideas don't work. Most people give up. Yeah, they're right. But they're wrong 100% because the only thing that matters is the one that works for you. My first several deals were not home runs. One of my first deals, I lost a couple $100K. One of my other deals, once I had more money, I lost millions. I had a guy who stole $25 million from one of our companies and had not one but multiple mistresses, which I find impressive because he was also married with kids plus running a company at a time in some way. Like, I've had really hard setbacks, but each one I had people telling me I told you so. And they were right that day, but not forever. The difference between me and the person who quit, I kept buying the next one. So if you keep doing this, mine was acquiring assets that produce cash flow. Yours may be just having some failures, but they get absorbed by the winners. I think, let me say this plainly, you don't need to be right every time. You need to stay in the game long enough to be right once in a really big way. Then all of your wrongs get wiped away. Now I look at a guy like Chamath Palihapitiya, who was like getting ridiculed on the internet for SPACs and bad investments. And I remember asking him at the time, I'm like, Chamath, dang, it's tough out there. You doing okay? And he was like, I love the attention. He's like, just watch me. I'm going to keep swinging and I'm going to win over the long term. Now look at the guy. He's done like 2 of the biggest and best transactions you could say in the last decade in investing. And so like these days I own, a big holding company at Contrarian Thinking, all of these companies that sort of make money while everyone else is refreshing their stock portfolio. And that's what Contrarian Thinking, our company, actually means. It's not about being different for the sake of being different. It's seeing what everyone else ignores and asking why. Why does everybody believe that you have to do business this way? Why does everyone want to be a tech founder when the plumber down the street is clearing $500,000? Like, these are the core ideas that led me to creating Main Street Millionaire Live, where my team and I teach you how to buy, operate, and grow profitable, boring businesses. I do not believe that you have to go to a tech startup to make millions in fact, I think that's a terrible idea. So we built something that's a tactical straight shooter boot camp where in 3 days you learn how to find the right small business to buy, incorporate AI into your business on day one, and do what I did, like buy that first laundromat that changed my life and set me on the path to ownership. I don't think there's another stock as reliable as a business that pays you every week. And, if you think that same way that I do, like, I want you at Main Street Millionaire Live. You can hit the link and I'd love to see you there because I don't think business ownership is about having a big title. I think it is about, if you don't have ownership, it will be the most expensive thing you'll never own. That's the key to freedom. But I want to get personal with this idea about like the fire inside of you need. You're going to use everything you've got to win. The comeback's going to be longer than you think. It's going to be harder than you thought, and you're going to want to give up at many points. I grew up watching my parents work themselves raw. Like, my mom was a 30-year special education teacher. My dad built things with his hands. He was a carpenter. He owned granite and marble quarries. I used to watch him saw it with him and his brother, install it. He worked in roofing. He was in a slaughterhouse. He had a work ethic that, like, I can't even imagine. And then I went to one of the most dangerous places on earth at 20-something years old in Juarez. And I saw what happens to people who don't have any options. They were trafficked. They were brutally murdered in the desert because they had no economic power. And that changed something in me permanently. I hope it does the same to you. So when someone tells me money isn't that important, or money's the root of all evil, or it's not about the money, I know they've never been in a place where they didn't really have it. Because you guys tell me in the comments, what's it like when you don't have money? What's it like when a rich person says, well, it's not really about the money? You're like, yeah, let me fucking find out. Let me get some of that, and then I'll figure it out. Because the truth about money is it's freedom, it's safety, and it's a protection of your life. I think it's the sword of the 21st century. And I want to arm as many people as possible. Like, you don't need followers. You need it because when you have nothing, you can have anything happen to you because you have no leverage. And I think the gap between those two things is not knowledge. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's typically, what are you willing to do? What is the game you are choosing to play? What is the voice inside your head telling you when other people say you're not capable of it? That is the real question. And it's the only part that actually matters. We're not trying to create followers here. I'm trying, you and me, to have a conversation about, why are you still stuck before the comeback even starts? When are you going to be the story other people tell about the person who had it hard, who was the victim, who was struggling, and then won? And if that sounds too dramatic, I don't know, good. It should. Because staying broke when you don't have to be, that ain't it. Working for a job you hate for 40 years and calling it responsible, that's a tragedy. Change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of making change. I left the golden handcuffs because they hurt more than the uncertainty. I bought the first business when the fear of staying was worse than the fear of failing. You have that inflection point right now in your life, the place where you're staying comfortable, and that's the most dangerous thing you can do. I think you should treat your comeback personally. Like, your comeback isn't going to look like mine. It shouldn't. Yours might start in a cubicle and go through a franchise or a side hustle or a conversation you've been avoiding for 3 years, or becoming a corporate exec and making so much money it makes other people uncomfortable, or building a huge business with partners, raising a bunch of capital, doing something that someone told you never could do. Someone else decided what you were before you could show them who you are, and you're going to still carry that right now as you listen to this? No. You can carry it, but only if you use it. The weight isn't holding you down. That's your training wheels. Like that colleague who called me a secretary, I'll remember that. The family who said I was making a mistake, fuel. The Wall Street friends who disappeared, fuel. Every single thing that's risky and are you sure, fuel. You don't beat them by arguing. You don't beat them by proving them wrong to their face. You cast a shadow so big that nobody can see them to begin with. You outgrow them. You outbuild them. You outlast them. And here's the thing. You don't even have to be the smartest person in the room to do it. You just have to be the one who doesn't quit, and the one who buys the business when the last one didn't work out for you, the one who makes the call when the last 5 people hung up on you and yelled in your face, the one who gets up tomorrow and does the boring work that nobody posts about on Instagram. Because I found that all the big things, they start small. My quote unquote empire started with one laundromat and everybody laughing. Now it's a mission to free 1 million people. So what's your laundromat? What's the boring, unsexy, nobody understands it first step that you keep talking yourself out of? So stop talking. This is your chance to stop planning your escape, stop waiting for permission. The comeback is personal, and it always was. The only person who gets to decide when it starts is you. So go buy something. Go make it extraordinary. Go do something huge. And I want you to tell me next week, what are you doing to change your life? Because that comeback story can be way bigger than you could ever imagine. God, who gets this is Michael Jordan. In fact, there was famous lore about him that you didn't talk shit to Michael, because if you did, that man amped up. And they only realized this because Michael would sometimes have a game where he was chilling, he was a little bit slower. Then somebody would talk a little shit to Michael. And Michael would go on to win the game, beat all former records, and annihilate that human. So famously, one of his coaches said the worst thing you could ever do to Michael was tell him he couldn't do something. And if you wanted him to do it, it'd be better if you told him that to his face. That's what I'm talking about. The other goat at this, Dana White. Dana White famously says, I am an incredible friend, but I am an even more dangerous enemy. And I love this line because Dana had time after time after time where people came after him. And he kept saying, no, there's no way I'm giving up. In fact, when he supported, whether you like the guy or not, one president, all these sponsors threatened to shut him down. He just doubled down on it and said, no, I'm going all in. I don't care what you guys think about me. Famously, when Theo Von came on Dana White's podcast, or I guess the other way, when Dana White came on Theo Von's podcast, Theo Von told him a story about how, I believe it was Peloton, the bike company, had promised Theo to do a couple of things, didn't end up following through on it, and talked about some really bad stuff publicly that Dana didn't agree with. So what did Dana do? He said, are you serious? Is this true? He goes, somebody Google this, find out if this is true. This is true. He goes, take all the bikes out of all the UFC that are Peloton, throw them in the trash, tell them we're never buying a Peloton again, tell them we're never allowing any sponsorships from them again. He just went ham. Theo Von was like, cool. And I love that because that is you taking a side. The man was like, are you serious? They said that? And I'm kind of keeping some of the details out of it because who cares if you agree with the detail or not? You get to choose your side. You get to have your comeback. Sylvester Stallone, the guy was unhinged. I mean, talk about a comeback story. He was so broke. He had like $30 on him. He was going through a really hard time with his wife. But he was so convinced that he wanted to be not only a famous actor, but he wanted to be in Hollywood at a level of the game that nobody else could imagine. He had written Rocky, and he got it in front of a couple of producers at a studio. And the lore goes that Stallone had about $30 left. His wife was about to leave him. They offered him thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, which could have changed his life back then, and some of the rights to the film. And they were going to make his movie. This is a man who went to hundreds of casting calls. They all told him no. They said, well, who's going to listen to you with that weird voice you've got and that beat up face? No chance. So he gets his movie in front of like the major movie execs. But then he says, I want to play the role. I want to play Rocky. And they're like, no way. This guy, you're going to be the lead? Have you seen your face? And he turned it down. So he went back home, told his wife that he turned it down. She left him. He kept going, kept pitching it to other people. It was him, his dog, and like a couple bucks. He got to such a low point that he stood outside of a little market gas station and he sold his dog for the couple of dollars that he needed to keep going. He sold his best friend, the person that he said, the thing that he said he loved most in the world, the last thing he had. He sold his dog for like $50 or something. Then he goes and he sells the rights to the movie, but for like pennies on the dollar.